minutes of your time this evening. And hello, everyone, and welcome to another Buzz Foundation All Things Community. My name is Tracy Burnett. Buzz Foundation, of course, as many of you know, is a nonprofit foundation whose mission is to educate on awareness and safety in the motorcycle community and the community in general, while supporting the families in the community, the injured riders, and families of the fallen whenever possible. And we again just want to thank everyone who has supported the foundation and doing what we do. And just a special thank you to all of those who worked so hard during the unforeseeable circumstances this year and making things happen with our online events and sponsored series with Sports Bike Sheet and Just Us Resources, along with the other many co-hosts and ambassadors who made the 2020 event possible. And we now continue with another episode here tonight of All Things Community. And as an officer of Buzz Foundation, it is my privilege to have an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with Attorney Gary Poole with Gary Poole Law Office. Welcome, Attorney Poole.
I appreciate you having me. Privileged to be on the show tonight. Also been a privilege to sponsor Buds throughout the year, and over the last year joined as a board of directors. So appreciate you letting me do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And before I go any further tonight, before we go any further, ladies and gentlemen, we also had a special person who wanted to be up here tonight, but due to illness, they are not able to be up here. So we're going to honor them with this show tonight. Our dear friend, Lewis Clark, this show is for you because since 2011, you have believed in Buzz Foundation, you have supported, and you're always that ambassador for awareness and safety. So we thank you. So with our moment tonight with Attorney Gary Poole, we're going to gear around some conversation pieces on what we know and reviewing with the things that's going on with Buzz Foundation. So as a former insurance adjuster, I always had to understand the different things going on when it comes to speaking to or getting statements from clients or having to speak to their attorneys. But before we get into all that, Mr. Poole, can you share with us? I know many of us seen you out there supporting communities, various dealerships, various events, and we'll go into that as well. But just can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you practiced?
I came to college at UNC Chapel Hill in 1978, and I've never left. I still live in Chapel Hill. So met my wife when I was in college. Got married a week before I started law school in 1982 and graduated UNC Chapel Hill Law School in 85. Unbelievably, I've been practicing for 35 years. Gray hair probably gives it away. But met a lot of great people along the way. And so I started practicing in 1985. Probably the most important thing in my career that happened was in April of 1996. I'd been a partner in a law firm in Durham for several years, but I sort of always knew that I wanted to open up my own practice, to be a solo practitioner. So the paralegal I had had for a few years, her name's Kristen, she and I left and opened the office here in Chapel Hill in April 1996. She is still my paralegal, 29 and a half years. And that's great. I couldn't do it without her. Even before I left, but the whole time since I've left, all I've done is represent individuals who've been injured in some type of motor vehicle accident. Probably over the last 20 plus years, at any given time, it's generally been about 60% motorcyclists and the other 40% mostly car accidents during that time. So that's how I have gotten to where I'm at today.
So it seemed like as soon as you got out of school and everything, it just fast forward on to just being an attorney. So thank you for your years of service to the community and to us indeed. And I know that it does take dedication and perseverance. So we appreciate you and not only just for what you do in Chapel Hill, but just throughout all North Carolina in assisting those that I know of. I think for me, for the fact that, like I was saying earlier, as a former insurance adjuster, I always had to listen to individuals just as you do, having to make those decisions on right or wrong, and particularly with North Carolina. So we're just kind of getting on into that because, it was always the states had their percentage. In North Carolina, that 1% that can go either way. So many questions that I had, and that was from the majority of some of our individuals out there or listeners, that the question, one of the main questions they want us to share tonight is that what can you share with us regarding, motorcycle accidents and injuries? Just taking a few moments concerning the types of knowing your rights and taking care of those rights and going to the right person to understand what rights you do have.
Yeah, and although my office is in Chapel Hill, I do represent individuals across the state. I used to say I would travel to meet you anywhere. Well, things have changed a little bit. So when I still do that every now and then, but we're distanced, but a lot of times now it's this way or over the phone, and I'm sure that'll get better. So if we're talking about a motorcycle accident where the motorcyclist is blaming the other driver for the accident, at some point, the motorcyclist is going to call the insurance company and make claims and say, your driver caused my accident, so I'd like for you to pay for some things, or either I make that call for them. But what I've learned over the years is that there's actually a lot of things that a motorcyclist can do before that call ever happens to maximize the chance that they'll get reimbursed for what they want to get reimbursed for. And it really starts at the scene of the accident. What I mean by that is that oftentimes the other driver, the driver of the car, will say, this was not my fault. It was your fault, Mr. or Miss Motorcyclist. So what can a motorcyclist do to get themselves in a better position that the insurance company of the driver of the car is going to say, yeah, it was our guy's fault? Now, again, everything I say is really based on that if you feel up to doing these things at the scene, if you're medically able, it's great. For example, don't move the vehicles before the police get there, because the officer is going to come and they're going to investigate the accident and make a determination as to who's at fault. If the other person starts moving their vehicle, if you've got the wherewithal and can take photographs of the scene, that'd be great. But I think maybe the most important thing is if there's somebody there that comes to you and says, I saw everything. I saw the accident. Just tell them, if you can stay around and talk to the officer, that's great. If not, can you give me your information? Here's my number, text it to me, because that could be the deciding difference as to who the officer blamed, especially if the driver of the car says, hey, it's not my fault. The other thing is, I say pictures. Yeah. You don't want to make a spectacle of it, but you can tell an insurance adjuster, here's how my client's been injured. They've got really bad road rash, for example. But unless they see a picture of it, they just can't understand really how bad it can be. So have family and friends take pictures from the beginning, if you can. And one thing that gets a little bit lost sometimes is that whenever a motorcyclist is in an accident, typically they always have personal property that's damaged. Their helmet, boots, jackets, cell phone, belts, underwear. It doesn't matter. What I tell clients is don't throw any of that stuff away. If they cut your shirt, just put it in a bag. It's just easier to be able to prove that you really had that on, and you can get reimbursed for it, for example. So those are the kind of things, even before beginning at the scene of the accident, that can maybe put you in a better position to recover from the insurance company on your claim.
Indeed. And you touched on a lot of topics, because when we're asking for a statement, particularly with someone who has no attorney representation, pictures help, pictures of the vehicle, kind of gives determination of exactly what happened. Often you tell clients, when you're telling me what happened, put me in your driver's seat, or put me on, tell me what happened so I can see it through your eyes. Tell me what happened.
And for example, and I don't mind if my clients give statements to the other insurance company. I like to be on the phone with them
Yeah.
And then I practice with them beforehand.
Right.
And I think sometimes they think it's silly that we practice because they think I lived it. But sometimes it's just really important. Like you'll say, now, how fast were you going? And they say, well, I was going the speed limit. I was going about 45.
Correct.
And I say, well, I'm looking at the accident report, and the accident report says the speed limit's 35. Oh, yeah, I was only going 35. And so it's those kind of things that can, and he was really going 35. Yeah. But it's those kind of things that can get you in trouble sometimes. So I think it's good to at least talk to a lawyer before you give that recorded statement to make sure that you've covered all your bases.
And that on an injury rider, how much more difficult has it been, or when you're talking to someone, and in this case, there's a fatality, a fallen rider, and a family member seeks representation?
What I always think about is that that their grieving is the most important thing. Everything is already set in stone. The fact that they died, how they died, if there were any witnesses, if there are skid marks that you need to take photographs of, that's all set in stone. To me, what I tell the family is the most important thing right now, over the next couple of weeks or the next few weeks, if there's still a lot to be done, is just to get through that process. We can I can handle some things on your end, and things especially like the motorcycle. And a lot of times the damage to the vehicle is the first thing that gets taken care of. And I'll do that for them, but I let them just try to, you grieve and you do what you've got to do. We can get to the case. Nothing's going to change, but let's get you through this first. And I think, and you'll be able to just, I think, sort of, not listen better, but sort of understand maybe a little more what's going on, because right now their mind's just flooded. And I mean, and the reason I know this, I had my wife's sister, brother-in-law, and niece died in an accident. It's been about 25 years ago now. And I worked on that case, but I remember just at the beginning, there's just so much stuff that's non-legal that you've got to deal with. And so I think moving past that, to me, is the most important thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I definitely can understand that, just being in that same situation, and losing a brother to the accident. I remember just knowing what things they needed at the scene, what questions, and you talked about the skid marks, and even all the property from the backpack he had on to his helmet. We had to keep all those for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, and it's those kind of things. The standard things that I want is, let's look at what kind of insurance you have.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the personal property. Let's talk about the motorcycle. Was there any extra equipment on it? We want to try to get as much as we can. And all of that's really important. But at the beginning, it just seems like it is just not important at all. I know I've got to do it, but what I've learned is that you have to really pick when is a good time to start talking about that. I think you just got to really feel the situation out, figure out who to talk to. If it could be that the sister's the best person to talk to, because it's just so difficult for the wife or the husband to talk, or the child. So you've got to also figure out kind of who's the best person that can help me here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talked about coverage in our conversation, and what it means to understand your coverage as well. I know that you probably run across many clients and people that don't even understand things like underinsured and underinsured. And kind of one of the simplest things to explain with them is that one protects you when the person has no insurance, and the other protects you when someone has little insurance.
Sure.
Do you find that it is a increasingly question that you get, or a question from time to time?
Yeah, and maybe the best way to do it is tell you this. I have, over the years, I've spoken to a lot of motorcycle groups from Harley owner group chapters to other groups. And I'll get up and I'll say, if you're injured in an accident, you want to make sure that you're paid in full for your medical bills, your lost wages, appropriate amount for how you've been injured, and if you have a permanent injury. And then I say this, and this really perks everybody up. I say, but if you're a motorcycle rider, the odds are that the insurance company of the person at fault, they're not going to pay you everything you deserve. And they kind of say, oh, what do you mean by that? Is the insurance company trying to get one over on me? And I say, no, it's because of two reasons. One, the overwhelming chance is that this is going to happen. Either the person who hits you has no insurance, or they only have the minimum amount of insurance that you have to have in North Carolina to be legal, which is only $30,000.
Correct.
And most of the motorcyclists I help, their medical bills are over $30,000, much less lost wages and pain and suffering and permanent injury. So then everybody, the group's just saying, what? And I'm saying, you're just not going to get paid in full. But the problem is that, and it's not just motorcyclists, everybody thinks these 3 or 4 things. One, I'm never going to be in an accident. 2, if I'm in an accident, I'm not going to get hurt. 3, well, if I get hurt, I'm not going to be hurt very bad. And then 4, if I am hurt, the other driver's insurance company is going to pay for me. And that's just not, I hate that that's not the real world. And the sort of the poster case for this is I represented this couple about 4 or 5 years ago, had been married 50 years the week before, and a car pulled out in front of him. He was on his motorcycle. She was in the passenger, and he died. He was 70 at the time. They'd been married 50 years. He died. She had really bad orthopedic injuries and was at UNC for a couple months. The other person had the minimum amount of insurance of $30,000, but they only had extra underinsured coverage of only $50,000. So this man died and the whole family only got $50,000 for his death. And she was hurt so bad, and she only got $50,000 for how bad she was hurt. And as I tell people, you got to assume that everybody on the road either has no insurance or very little insurance. So it's up to you to insure yourself. And just like you mentioned, uninsured coverage covers you if you get hit by somebody who doesn't have insurance, or you get hit by somebody who's a hit and run driver. And with motorcyclists, gosh, I think that just happens a lot more than anybody realizes, because I think what happens is that when people hit a motorcyclist, they panic and think, oh my God, I've hurt that person or killed them. So before they know it, they've left the scene and the deed's already been done. So they're just not going to turn themselves back in. And I think they know, oh, the motorcyclist is on the ground, so they didn't get my tag and that type thing. So uninsured coverage helps you when the person has no insurance. And in North Carolina, that's about 6% of your drivers, or it's a hit and run driver. And what happens is, if you get hit by an uninsured driver, your insurance company steps in and pays for your medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering, and your permanent injuries. Underinsured coverage means that person who hits you, they have insurance, but you've been hurt worse than the amount of insurance they have.
Correct. And
your insurance is better than theirs. So that means your insurance company is going to come in and pay the difference. But like a lot of everything, it matters how much you have.
correct.
So I tell motorcyclists to at least get uninsured and underinsured coverage of $250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident. If they can get more, I have $1 million worth of coverage because I see bad things. And so I have $1 million. And the good news is that uninsured and underinsured coverage is cheap.
Yeah.
For me, it's about $180, not a month, but a year for $1 million worth of coverage. if you have $100,000 of coverage, that's probably going to cost you about $80 a year. So the difference between 100 and $100,000 a million is $80 a month. And I used to kind of soft pedal this with motorcyclists, but here's what I say. That's about 2 or 3 t-shirts that you're going to buy from the Harley shop. Okay. That's all. 2 or 3 t-shirts a year makes up the difference for you to get a whole lot better insurance. So when you buy a t-shirt, you throw $30 into the kitty that's going to go to that extra insurance.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. And a good point there, because a lot of times when it comes to that insurance, individuals or a lot of cases don't realize the important. It's not for you, but you have those loved ones to leave behind. And if you're that primary breadwinner, you really should take a look at your insurance and exactly what you covered. Whether it's your auto, your motorcycle, life insurance, you really should take a look at what it is, and who you don't want to, God forbid something should happen, put your family in predicament where they're worse off.
And I know that I know it's hard for people to buy insurance and to in their mind think about, I'm paying a lot for insurance, because you're paying for something you hope you never have to use. And I think I think that's hard for people a lot of times. But I've spoken to a few groups, and there's been a few people that I've ended up representing from the groups I've spoken with, and they got the extra uninsured and underinsured coverage after they heard me talk, and they ended up needing it.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here tonight, to kind of share that. You mentioned, Attorney Poole, the events, and was the Harley dealerships or other dealerships locally, not just in Chapel Hill, but around. Seems like you have a strong interest in sharing that information with the motorcycle community. How did you get interested in the matter? Is coming outside of your office and being able to go from event to event and sharing that information with individuals. What drove you to take on such things, or even sponsor events?
I think a few things sort of came together. One reason I do what I do, as I mentioned, my wife's sister, brother-in-law, and niece were killed in an accident. I also have a nephew who was paralyzed in a car accident about 25 years ago. He's doing great, but he was still paralyzed in the accident. And so I just sort of knew that what I needed to do was help people who've been seriously injured. Unfortunately, that generally means motorcyclists. And after Kristen and I opened the office here, we got a lady, Pat, to come do the books, because we just couldn't do them. We couldn't do it. Could practice law, but can't do accounting. Right. Her name was Pat. So she started out doing it 3 hours a week. And then in a year, she was also the paralegal, and her husband rode. He'd been riding she was a little older than us, but he'd been riding he was 60 and he'd been riding like 45 years. And he came to the office one day, he said, Gary, I think this group motorcyclists just are underrepresented. And I think you ought to think about, trying to carve out a niche or getting involved with that group, because you like representing people who've been seriously injured and, do a good job at it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I started looking into it, but it takes a while to sort of slowly get into the community, to that motorcycle community. It's like you have to build street cred, so to speak, I think. And yeah, you know what I mean? And so I started representing motorcyclists, and then realized I sort of kind of needed to get out among the people. And so I started talking to some groups, and then I started sponsoring events. And, I would go to these events, and I thought, I need to give something out. So what I do is I give these out. These are motorcycle towels. And
you like our towels, yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of things that are given out that I would go to the fair and get things and I'd throw it away once I got home, but people seem to keep the towels. And I like going out and meeting people, and invariably somebody will come up with they'll have a case or a situation, and sometimes I can just help them right there. Thankfully, they're not hurt very bad, and I can give them some free advice on how to help kind of navigate with the insurance company. And So those have been really fun. It's been sort of hard the last 6 months. I haven't been, we haven't really been able to do much. But so looking forward to that. Hopefully next spring and summer, it'll open back up again.
Yes, we do certainly hope these things will get better, and we definitely appreciate, our collaboration and relationship. I love talking to individuals such as yourself who have the passion when it comes to the community and being able to share their information. I often used to wonder, like, how did I get involved with insurance or insurance adjuster or insurance investigation? And fast forward to 2020 or even 10 years ago, you realize that you retrieved all that information, you gained all that knowledge for such a time as when someone may need it, for such a time as when someone has to, you have to share your expertise, so to speak, with individuals that understand the importance of, insurance, or understand the importance of, the law. Every state is not like North Carolina. Every state doesn't require, for example, a helmet, what have you. So it's just taking on that knowledge, understanding your decision. What are you going to do best as a rider or auto or a motorcycle rider? It doesn't matter when you're on 2s, 3s, or 4s. What are you going to do to make sure that you can return home safe to your family? And like you said, a lot of people don't care about, or understand the various importance of insurance, or even with the law. It's hard sometimes to tell someone, especially in a fatality, that you can't, that the decision is not in their favor, so to speak. So it's very important to understand and have these things in place, just in case, protect yourself, whether you're in the right or in the wrong, when it comes to these accidents.
Well, and I mean, I am not an insurance agent. I don't sell insurance, but insurance is involved in everything I do. And, I've always seemed so unfair that, and I've had a situation where I've had 2 clients. This is really true. I've had 2 clients, motorcycle accidents. They both lost the lower part of their leg, had to be amputated after an accident. One client, he gets hit by somebody who has a huge amount of insurance on their vehicle. The other guy gets hit by somebody that's only got $50,000 of insurance on his vehicle. And my client, that one who lost his leg, he had a little more underinsured coverage, but it only got him up to $100,000 and he lost his leg. Whereas the other guy got much, much more, and it was really the same type of accident. But I hate when it's sort of the luck of the draw as to how much you're going to recover. So that's why I just really try to preach about the uninsured and underinsured coverage and insuring yourself. While we're sort of on the insurance coverage topic, one thing I wrote down to make sure I talk about is that motorcyclists love putting additional equipment and chrome and stuff on their motorcycle.
Yes.
They love doing that. The problem I run into a lot of times when those motorcycles are totaled and I'm trying to recover from them is, let's say the person's got $5,000 of additional equipment, then the formula to determine how much they're going to get is, what's the fair market value of that motorcycle? How much could the person have sold it for the week before their accident? And what insurance companies say to me is, Gary, he's got $5,000 of extra equipment, but who's going to pay for, who's going to pay him dollar for dollar all that? That's exactly what your guy wanted. Yeah. Maybe the guy buying it's only going to pay half. He would only like half of it. So the way to not get dinged on all the extra equipment that you buy is to look at your insurance policy and see if you've got optional equipment or additional equipment coverage. And then talk to your insurance agent and say, I've got these amount of extras I've put on the vehicle. How much would it cost me to get optional equipment coverage, whereby if my motorcycle's totaled or stolen, I get paid dollar for dollar for that? And I think because it's just, I think that's one thing also insurance wise that motorcyclists just don't think about, or they don't know about it, but it's something good to look into.
Yes, I'm glad you did bring about that point, because that is so true with the additional coverage. A lot of times people, well, if I just get collision and comp and property damage, or if I have the med pay, I'm good on cover. They consider that as their full coverage. But when you do go out and get these extras, you do have to realize that additional equipment coverage, definitely learning and educate yourself. It helps and pays off in the long run, certainly.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll kid with my motorcycle clients sometimes. I'll say, you've got in the order of least importance to the most important claim. You first have a claim for your personal property, then you have a claim for your motorcycle. And I'll joke and say a lot of people think the claim for the motorcycle is more important than the claim for how they've been injured. Exactly. And the person will laugh, but I know they're not kidding. They really believe that motorcycle is more important than how they're injured sometimes, because that's their baby. They put, money into it and that type thing. And I just would really like to get them paid for how much they put into it.
Absolutely. I definitely appreciate that. And I know we had one other thing that I have jotted down as well. The thing that I usually hear a lot is that I didn't see them. They were in my blind spot.
Yeah.
How often do you hear that, maybe from year to year?
Well, I think with my motorcycle clients, in terms of, you mean the person driving the car just doesn't see the motorcyclist?
Yeah.
A lot of my motorcyclist clients will say to me, Gary, I was going down the road and that person was sitting at the stop sign. They looked right at me and pulled out anyway. They did it on purpose. And I know sometimes I guess that happens, but I think what mostly happens is the car driver's looking right through the motorcyclist. They just glance and their eyes are not conditioned to see a bike and one headlight, for example. They're conditioned to see a car. And I think the same thing with the blind spot. You've got to, and you quickly just glance. There's nobody there, you think, and you go over. I mean, I'm a big believer, at least when I'm driving my car, of look twice, save a life. I really try to do that. But I think the motorcyclist has got to think just all the time that those cars don't see me. What can I do to be more visible? They just don't see me. And avoid the passing, and just think of it, when you're driving a motorcycle, think about like you're driving a car, kind of, and what do I look out for? What gets me in trouble sometimes when I drive a car? And think that way when you're riding your bike.
Definitely. I'm just, all of that is so true, and there's so many things where it's just that each and every one of us can learn. So very thankful for all them, just not just you, but just the different instructors who talk to us about, for their motorcycle, being certain things that you can do to make sure that, that's your thing. We're not saying go down the road and just fly and, make a lot of noise, but there are certain things that you can do. We all are responsible for, the safety and awareness on the road. So just all this information we talked about, where it's the accident or the rider or their families, or just understanding your rights and your coverage is so very important. So it's definitely humbling to have this conversation with you. And Mr. Poole, you just giving us your time here tonight. But before we conclude our conversation, is there anything else that you want to say or share with individuals tonight?
No, support BUDS. How about that?
Well, we all appreciate
support BUDS. And,
yeah.
and being, but I think that when you think about it, BUDS had an event canceled in September. They would have raised more money than they did. And there's been a lot of charity rides that I know I would normally have sponsored that didn't happen this year. So, think about, I know, money's tight with a lot of people. I understand that, but there are a lot of charities that are suffering, because they're not able to do rides and that type thing. And I know it'll pick up again next year. So maybe next year when you go, maybe give double. How about that?
How about that? Yes, indeed. We certainly appreciate you. And to each and every one of you up here tonight, there's certainly have families. We have families that have loved ones that are very ill. We are actually this week, what we're doing right now, before we end this call, is we are all wanting to support the honoree of this episode tonight, Lewis Clark and his family, as he's dealing with his illness and his wife and what have you. So if you want to find out how you can support, we're doing a challenge throughout the motorcycle community And if everybody take $20 each and donate to her, so I did want to add that in tonight. If you want the information on her cash app details, please make sure that you contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and we'll be glad to get you that information. So many families have been assisted with B.U.D S Foundation, and so we appreciate those individuals like Attorney Poole. And we just want to tell you all, each and every one of you tonight, and continue to stay safe. We know we're still dealing with COVID. We're still dealing with a pandemic out there. So still continue to do things that you have to do for you and your family. And above all, stay safe. Take heed to the information that we had tonight. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of B.U.D S Foundation, All Things Community. Take care.